Hello, today we're going to talk about mocking dependencies with traits for unit testing in Rust. So Rust is nice in that it encourages you to write your unit tests in the same file as your implementation, um, but sometimes you have a dependency that does something like making a network call that can introduce latency or flakiness in your tests. And we're going to talk about how to mock those out. And the whole point of this video is that in order to mock out a dependency, you need to first use dependency injection and make a trait for that dependency and then mock out the trait. So we're going to look at a very simple example, and this is all in a Medium post, so if you'd rather just follow the code there, then you can just jump there, but if you want to passively consume, then you can listen to the video. And there's also a repository for this. So here we have a very simple program that uses the request library, and it has a function that tells us if I have a URL, does that URL return HTML or something else? So we say, result is returns HTML, and then print out whether that's true or false. So example.com is going to return HTML, but other websites might return you JSON or something else. So here in our function, we have this async function, and we give it a URL as a string, and it might return an error. And we create this request client, and then we use this HTTP client to send the HTTP request, get the response, and give us the text for the body. And then we return true if the body starts with doctype HTML. And we have 3 unit tests for this. The first is example.com, which should return true. Then we have this API endpoint, which should return false because it returns JSON. And our third test is a website that does not exist, and that should return an error because we can't get any response from there. So if we go to our code and we type cargo test, then we send bad request, the non-HTML, and then send the good request. And I think there's some issue with my network card. But so here we have all unit tests pass, and they do what we expect. And it took more than half a second to run that test. So it seems like everything's great, our tests work, but let's see what happens if I turn off my network connection. So I just put my laptop in airplane mode. I'm going to rerun these tests, and now instead of everything passing, uh, all 3 of these tests are going to try and send HTTP requests, and they're going to time out. So the tests that wanted to get a response did not, and so those failed. The bad request, it wasn't a real website anyway, so we were never going to get a response. But that took 10 seconds to time out. And this is really frustrating because we haven't changed any code, and our tests went from green to red. So it's not an issue with the implementation, it's just some other flakiness that's happening. And the tests also took a long time to run. So you can imagine if this is in a bigger project, that's going to start getting really, really annoying and slow down your development cycles. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this code, which here we are creating this HTTP client within the function, and we're going to use dependency injection. And the punchline is that you have to use the dependency injection in order to use mocking. So I'm going to show you 2 commits. The first creates this dependency injection framework, and then once we've done that legwork, the second commit that I'm going to show you is much simpler, and that just puts the mocking on top of the dependency injection, and at that point it's much easier to do. So here is the commit that introduces dependency injection into this code. So if I make this a little bigger, So this our test that's for mocking. No, not for mocking. That's to create a text fixture, and I'll show you how that works because we need to inject the dependency into our tests as well as our function. This is not a tutorial on Rust error handling, but we need this new type of error exception type. This isn't like a great way to do the exception handling, but we need to have a new exception type because we're using traits. And this says how to convert from the request library type of error to our new type of error. And so here, this is the important part where we're creating a trait called HTTP body getter. So this is a trait for anything that can get the body of an HTTP, send an HTTP request and get the body of it. So we're just going to say get HTTP response body given a URL, and you give it, it returns either a string or this network error exception type. And we will implement this trait for this request client. So here's this this is a library, and this trait is something we're defining in our own code, so we can implement our trait on an external struct, and we're going to say how it can get HTTP response body. And what it will do is do what it was doing in our function before, get the URL, send it, wait for the status, return an error if there's an error, and implicitly that'll call the from method to convert the request error type to our network error type if it happens, and get the text and await. So that's implementing the trait, and then this isn't important. And then here in our actual implementation of this function, the returns HTML function, there are two big differences here. So we've removed the part where we're telling it how to get the body of the HTTP request, and instead we're just calling this trait method. And we're also giving the client as a parameter to this function. So the caller of this function is providing the client, it's injecting the dependency, it's giving the function the HTTP client to use to do whatever it needs to do with it. And that's really useful because we can give it different types of clients depending on whether we're calling it for real or we're calling it in a test. Now here down in our test, we have a fixture. So we're creating a fixture. This will be, we'll call it, this is the client we're going to use for testing. And we're not doing mocking yet. So here we're creating a real HTTP client from the request library. It's the same one we were using before, but now we have it as a fixture. So it'll be easy to swap out with a mock in our second commit. So down here, we are using this fixture here, and that's the only real difference, is that now whenever we call returns HTML, we're providing it this client, and that's what's going to be used in the test. So functionally, this will run the same as our first example, but we've just refactored it to give the dependency injection. Arguably, it's more complicated, but it's going to be worth it for the second step. So the second step is to mock out this trait. So here we're introducing the mock library, and down here we're taking this HTTP body getter trait and we're giving it this macro for automock. So this will create a mock class for this trait. And the place where we use that is down in our unit tests. And you can see that this second commit is a lot smaller than the dependency injection one because we had to do all that refactoring in order to make the mocking really easy. So here, now we're not going to use a real HTTP client. Instead, we're going to use a mock, which is mock HTTP body getter. So we take the trait and we make a mock out of it. And we have to tell the mock, well, when you call this get HTTP response body function, what do you expect it to return? And we give it this closure um, that's telling it, okay, here's the function to run when you call this. And so we take the URL and we'll just give it deterministic responses to our test cases. For example.com, we're going to return an empty HTML document. For this API endpoint, we're going to return a very small JSON document. And for anything else, we'll return our network error. And let's see how that runs. So here I'll go from our original code to the one with dependency injection. So we've gone from here to injecting the client and now mocking out. And now if I call cargo test, then we have to rebuild it because we have a few new dependencies. But now it ran almost instantaneously. And just to show that it's not flaky anymore, if I turn my laptop to airplane mode and rerun the tests, it still runs instantaneously and everything passes. So hopefully this helps you get into the right mindset for unit testing with Rust. It took me a few days to figure it out, so hopefully it can help you do it faster.